The rain poured steadily over Central Park, each drop a somber reminder of the heavy burden Clarice Morgan had carried in her heart for 15 long years. She walked slowly, her black umbrella shielding her from the downpour. But nothing could protect her from the haunting memories that resurfaced on this day. The sky was a heavy, metallic gray, as if the world itself shared her sorrow. Exactly 15 years ago, her daughter Emily had vanished without a trace, leaving a void that time had only deepened. The colors of the world had faded, and the pain had only grown sharper. As Clarice paused near a secluded corner of the park, her gaze fell on a solitary figure sitting on a bench a few yards away. It was a young woman, likely in her early 20s, barefoot and drenched by the rain. Her dark brown hair clung to her pale face, and her hunched shoulders seemed to bear an invisible weight. Clarice felt a pang in her chest. There was something about the scene that drew her in, as if the young woman's sadness mirrored her own. For a moment, she hesitated to approach, feeling like an intruder on a private moment, but the pull of familiarity was too strong to ignore. She folded her umbrella and walked to the bench, where the girl, visibly shivering, held her face in her hands, silently crying. "Are you okay, dear?" Clarice asked, her voice gentle yet firm. The young woman slowly raised her eyes, as if emerging from a trance. Up close, Clarice was struck by the resemblance. The brown hair, the look of despair in her eyes, the fragile posture of someone carrying far too much. I don't know what to do anymore," the young woman stammered, her voice trembling. Clarice felt a protective instinct she hadn't experienced in years. She sat beside her, ignoring the rain soaking her own clothes, and placed a comforting hand on the young woman's shoulder. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Anna," the girl whispered. Clarice repeated the name, trying to steady her racing thoughts. "Where's your family, Anna?" The young woman looked down, struggling against her tears. "My mother, she died a few months ago. Since then, I've been alone." Anna's sobs broke through, and Clarice's stomach churned. The words brought back painful memories of Emily, who had faced her own struggles before disappearing. "Come with me, dear," Clarice said impulsively. "I can't leave you here in the rain." Anna hesitated, her eyes still weary despite her sadness. I don't know," she began, but Clarice gently interrupted. "Don't worry. I just want to help you. My name is Clarice, and there's something about you that makes me feel like we should talk." After a moment of silence, Anna nodded and stood shakily. Clarice steadied her, and they walked toward her car parked on the other side of the park. As they walked, Clarice couldn't help but notice the locket around Anna's neck. It was impossible to miss. The gold locket, engraved with the initials EM for Emily Morgan, was a unique piece Clarice had commissioned for her daughter's 18th birthday, just months before she vanished. Clarice's mind raced. It was too much of a coincidence, but for now, she kept her suspicions to herself. All she could do was offer Anna shelter and slowly uncover the truth. The drive to the Morgan mansion was quiet, the silence filled with unspoken questions. Anna stared out the window, lost in thought, while Clarice tried to organize her racing mind. When they arrived at the imposing mansion, Anna looked at the building with a mix of awe and unease. Clarice quickly reassured her. "I know it's a bit intimidating, but you'll be safe here," she said, opening the car door for Anna. Inside, Clarice led Anna to a guest room upstairs, a space that had been empty for far too long. "You can stay here as long as you need," Clarice said, fluffing the pillows on the bed. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out how to help you." Anna glanced around the room, still cautious, but there was something in Clarice's tone that put her at ease. "Thank you, Miss Clarice," she said, her voice steadier now. Clarice smiled, though her mind was elsewhere, lost in memories and unanswered questions. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to find out. This encounter felt like more than mere chance. It felt like the universe offering her a second chance, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. That night, as Anna slept in a comfortable bed for the first time in weeks, Clarice sat in her armchair, a cup of tea in her hands, staring at the rain outside. Her heart, once hardened by pain, now beat with a mix of hope and fear. The locket, the resemblance, the sense of familiarity, it all pointed to something deeper. What if Anna was her granddaughter? What if Emily was still out there, waiting to be found? The next morning, Clarice rose early, her mind still racing. She climbed the stairs quietly and stood in the doorway of Anna's room, watching her sleep. After a long moment, she descended the stairs, resolute. There were questions that needed answers, and she couldn't wait any longer. She picked up the phone and dialed Richard Hayes, her trusted lawyer. "Richard, I need your help," she said without preamble. "I need you to investigate a young woman named Anna. She appeared last night, and I have reason to believe she might be my granddaughter." There was a pause on the other end. "Your granddaughter? Clarice, this is unexpected." "I know how it sounds, Richard," Clarice replied, her voice firm. "But she has the locket, the one I gave Emily before she disappeared. This can't be a coincidence." As she hung up, Clarice knew there was no turning back. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Richard sighed, but his voice was firm when he replied, "I'll look into it, Clarice. I'll need more details about this young woman, but we'll start. Just be careful. We can't raise false hopes. Not for you and not for her." "I know," Clarice responded firmly, "but I need to know the truth." After hanging up, Clarice stood still for a moment, staring at the phone. Her heart raced, her hands trembling. Hope mingled with the fear of being wrong, but if there was even a chance, she would see it through to the end. Suddenly, a sound from upstairs pulled her back to reality. She left the kitchen and climbed the stairs, finding Anna already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking lost. "Good morning, Anna," Clarice said, trying to sound calm and reassuring. Anna looked up, forcing a small smile. "Good morning, Miss Clarice. Sorry, I think I overslept." "Don't worry about that, dear," Clarice said, pulling up a chair to sit beside the bed. "I made some coffee. You must be hungry." Anna nodded, though her movements were hesitant, as if she were still trying to orient herself in a place she didn't yet trust. Clarice watched her closely, searching for clues in every gesture. "You mentioned last night that you lost your mother recently." Clarice began cautiously, trying to build a connection. "How are you coping with that?" Anna lowered her eyes, her hands gripping the bedspread. "It still hurts a lot," she admitted. "She was all I had. Since she's gone, I don't know where to go. It was always just me and her. We moved a lot, and she never talked much about the past." Clarice leaned forward slightly, her hands folded in her lap, struggling to keep her composure. Every word from Anna made her believe more strongly that this young woman might be connected to Emily. "I understand," Clarice said softly. "Losing someone we love is devastating. But I want you to know that you have a safe place here, at least until you decide what you want to do." Anna raised her eyes, studying Clarice with a mix of gratitude and lingering distrust. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked before she could stop herself. Clarice smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Because I feel that, in a way, you and I have something in common," she replied carefully. "I also lost someone very important many years ago. My daughter disappeared, and I've never known what happened to her." Anna frowned, clearly surprised by the confession. For a moment, her eyes reflected compassion. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I can't imagine what that must have been like for you." Clarice shook her head, as if pushing away the painful memories. "It's hard, but life goes on, and we find ways to keep moving forward," she said, standing and extending her hand to Anna. "Come, let's have some breakfast downstairs." As they sat at the kitchen table, Clarice did her best to make Anna feel at ease. She served her a slice of cake and a cup of coffee, watching as the young woman ate, visibly hungry. "Anna," Clarice asked casually as she spread butter on a slice of bread, Do you have any relatives or friends we can contact? Anna hesitated, seeming to weigh whether to be completely honest. No, she admitted, staring at her coffee. My mother was the only family I had, and we weren't close to anyone. She was reserved. I see, Clarice replied, keeping her tone calm while her mind raced. And what about your father? Did she ever talk about him? Anna shook her head. No, I never knew him. My mother always said he wasn't part of our lives. Clarice's heart tightened. The silence about Anna's father, the isolated life, the constant moving, it all felt like an echo from the past. Well, while you're here, I want you to feel at ease, Clarice said with an encouraging smile. You can stay as long as you need. Anna looked at Clarice with a mix of relief and caution. Thank you, Miss Clarice. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. Don't worry about that now, Clarice said quickly. The important thing is that you're safe. After breakfast, Clarice led Anna to the living room. They sat on the brown leather sofa, which seemed barely used, and Clarice took the opportunity to engage Anna in conversation, hoping to learn more about her. And you, Anna, Clarice asked, trying to sound natural, what did you do before all this happened? Anna thought for a moment. I worked at a coffee shop in a small town. Nothing special, but it was a job, she said with a shy smile. I never had a real career. My mother always said we should live in the present, never plan too far ahead. Clarice nodded, recognizing Emily's influence in Anna's words. Her daughter had always been unpredictable, a free spirit who refused to conform to society's expectations. At the time, Clarice hadn't understood it. Now, perhaps she did. Your mother was very wise, Anna, Clarice said softly. Sometimes the present is all we have. Anna looked at Clarice, her eyes softening a little. For the first time, it seemed she was beginning to trust a woman who had taken her in so unexpectedly. Miss Clarice, Anna began hesitantly, I'd like to know more about your daughter. You said she disappeared. It must have been terrible. How did you cope? Clarice took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. Talking about Emily was still painful, but perhaps it was necessary, especially now. Emily, Clarice began, her voice slightly choked, was my only daughter. She was strong and independent, but also very sensitive. We were close when she was little, but as she grew older, our differences became more apparent. I wanted her to have a stable life, a career. But Emily wanted the world. One day, she simply vanished. No note, no goodbye, just silence and the absence she left behind. Clarice paused, her eyes distant. For years, I searched for her. I hired detectives, distributed photos, went to places I never imagined I would, all in the hope of finding her. But the leads went cold, and everyone seemed to give up, except me. Anna listened intently, absorbing every word. There was something in Clarice's voice that touched her deeply. The woman's pain was almost palpable, and Anna felt a mix of compassion and growing curiosity. I'm so sorry, Anna said, genuinely moved. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you. Clarice nodded, looking at Anna with a serious expression. You know, Anna, there's a pain that never goes away. It's like a hole that never closes, a wound that always hurts. And somehow, when I saw you in that park yesterday, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anna looked away, uncomfortable with the intensity of the confession. Part of her wanted to open up, to trust Clarice, but another part warned her it was dangerous to get too involved. I don't know what to say, Anna began, but Clarice interrupted gently. You don't have to say anything right now, Clarice said. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever your story is, you don't have to carry this burden alone. Anna remained silent, processing Clarice's words. She wasn't used to so much attention or kindness, and it left her feeling confused. The impulse to run and protect herself was strong, but there was something about Clarice's presence that made her want to stay, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could find some peace here. "Thank you, Miss Clarice," Anna finally said with a faint smile. "I've never had anyone care for me like this." Clarice held Anna's hand briefly, a silent gesture of support that spoke more than words ever could. "Don't worry, dear. You're safe now." The day passed quietly. Clarice showed Anna around the house, which the young woman found impressive in its size and elegance. Each room seemed to tell a story filled with memories and echoes of a life Anna had never known. As they walked through the grand hallways, Clarice pointed out family heirlooms and shared stories from her life with Jonathan and Emily. Anna listened intently, her eyes wide as she absorbed every detail. She felt a strange mix of awe and sadness, wondering what it would have been like to grow up in a place like this, surrounded by such history and luxury. When they entered what was once Emily's room, Clarice paused, her hand resting on the doorknob. "I've kept it exactly as she left it," she said softly, a hint of pain in her voice. "I always hoped." She trailed off, but Anna understood. The room was a perfectly preserved time capsule of a teenage girl's life, frozen in the moment Emily had disappeared. Posters of bands Anna had never heard of adorned the walls, and a stack of old magazines sat on the desk, their covers faded with time. Anna's heart ached as she imagined her mother here, young and full of life, unaware of the turmoil that lay ahead. She picked up a framed photo from the bedside table. Emily, smiling brightly, her arms around a younger Clarice. "You look so happy," Anna murmured, tracing her mother's face with her finger. Clarice nodded, her eyes misting over. "We were. Despite our differences, there was so much love in this house. I want you to know that, Anna. Whatever happened, whatever drove Emily away, it doesn't change the fact that she was loved, that you are loved." As they continued their tour, ending up in the vast gardens behind the mansion, Anna felt overwhelmed by the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. She sat on a stone bench, trying to process everything she had seen and heard. Clarice settled beside her, sensing her granddaughter's turmoil. "I know it's a lot to take in," Clarice said gently, "but I want you to feel at home here, Anna, for as long as you want to stay." Anna looked up at her grandmother, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've never really had a home before, not like this." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the manicured lawns, Clarice and Anna made their way back inside. The day had been filled with revelations and shared memories, but there was still so much left unsaid, so many questions unanswered. Over dinner, prepared by the household staff who had discreetly kept their distance during the day, Anna finally gathered the courage to ask about the one thing that had been weighing on her mind. "Miss Clarice," she began hesitantly, "can you tell me more about what happened the night my mother disappeared?" Clarice set down her fork, her expression growing somber. She had known this question was coming, had dreaded it, yet knew it was necessary. "It was a night much like tonight," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "Emily and I had argued earlier in the day. It was nothing unusual, just the typical clashes between a headstrong teenager and her worried mother. But something was different this time. Emily seemed scared, like she was carrying a weight I couldn't see." Anna leaned forward, hanging on every word as Clarice continued her story. The tale that unfolded was one of mystery and heartbreak, a family torn apart by secrets and a daughter who vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but questions and a hole in her mother's heart. As Clarice finished speaking, the room fell into a heavy silence. Anna's mind was reeling, trying to reconcile this new information with the vague stories her mother had told her over the years. "There's so much I don't understand," Anna said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "So much that doesn't make sense." Clarice reached across the table, taking Anna's hand in hers. "I know, dear, and I promise you will find the answers together. Whatever the truth is, whatever happened to Emily, we'll face it as a family." Yet as they sat there, grandmother and granddaughter united by loss and hope, The Morgan mansion seemed to come alive around them. It was as if the very walls were whispering, holding secrets waiting to be uncovered. The journey ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges neither of them could yet imagine. But in that moment, as the last light of day faded and the first stars appeared in the sky, a bond was forming between Clarice and Anna, a bond that would be tested in the days to come, but one that held the promise of healing, of truth, and of a family reunited against all odds. Later that evening, Clarice sat in her study, surrounded by old photo albums and documents, her eyes fixed on a picture of Emily taken just weeks before her disappearance. The resemblance between Emily and Anna was undeniable, and with each passing moment, Clarice felt more certain of their connection. Yet the weight of her past decisions pressed heavily upon her. As she traced Emily's smiling face in the photograph, memories flooded back. Arguments about Emily's future, Clarice's insistence on a path her daughter didn't want, the growing distance between them. For the first time in years, Clarice allowed herself to consider that she might have played a role in Emily's departure. "I was too controlling," she whispered to the empty room, her voice thick with regret. "I thought I knew what was best for you, Emily, but maybe I was the one pushing you away." The realization hit her like a physical blow. Clarice had always seen herself as the victim of Emily's disappearance, but now she wondered if she had been in part the cause. The guilt was overwhelming, threatening to consume her. A soft knock on the door pulled Clarice from her thoughts. Anna stood in the doorway, hesitant to enter. "Miss Clarice? Are you all right?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Clarice quickly wiped away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Yes, dear, just reminiscing," she said, gesturing to the photos spread across her desk. Anna stepped closer, her eyes drawn to the image of Emily. "Is that your daughter?" Clarice nodded, watching Anna's reaction carefully. "Yes, that's Emily. This was taken about a month before she disappeared." Anna's hand reached out, almost touching the photograph before pulling back. "She looks happy," she said softly. "She was, at least in that moment," Clarice replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "Anna, there's something I need to tell you, something about Emily and about you." Anna's eyes widened, a mix of curiosity and apprehension crossing her face. "About me?" Clarice took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Yes, Anna, I have reason to believe that you might be my granddaughter, Emily's daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. That's impossible," she finally managed to say. "My mother never mentioned. She couldn't be." "The locket you wear," Clarice said gently. "I gave that to Emily on her 18th birthday. It's unique, made especially for her." Anna's hand flew to the locket around her neck, clutching it tightly. "But my mother said this was a family heirloom. She never told me about you or about any of this." Clarice stood, moving closer to Anna but careful not to crowd her. "I know this is a lot to take in, Anna. I'm still trying to understand it all myself, but I've hired someone to look into it, to find out the truth." Anna took a step back, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "I don't understand. If what you're saying is true, why didn't my mother ever tell me? Why did she keep me away from you?" The pain in Anna's voice was palpable, and Clarice felt her heart breaking for the young woman. "I don't know, Anna, but I think it might be my fault." Anna's gaze snapped back to Clarice, confusion replacing some of the fear in her eyes. "Your fault? What do you mean?" Clarice sank back into her chair, the weight of her confession bearing down on her. "Emily and I, we had our differences. We argued often. And now, looking back, I can see how suffocating I must have been." Tears welled up in Clarice's eyes as she continued. "I think I might have driven her away, Anna. My need for control, my inability to see her for who she truly was. I think that's why she left. And if you are her daughter, that's why she kept you hidden from me." Anna stood silently, processing Clarice's words. The revelation seemed to stir something within her, a memory or a feeling she couldn't quite grasp. My mother, she always seemed afraid, Anna said slowly. Anna's hands trembled as she unclasped the locket from around her neck. She opened it, revealing a tiny photograph inside. A young woman with a bright smile, unmistakably similar to the one in the photo on Clarice's desk. "This is the only picture I have of my mother," Anna said softly. "She always told me it was taken by someone who loved her very much." Clarice leaned forward, her breath catching as she recognized the image. "I took that picture," she whispered. "It was Emily's 16th birthday. We had a picnic in the garden, just the two of us. It was one of the last truly happy days we spent together before things started to fall apart." The revelation seemed to break something open in Anna. Tears began to fall freely down her cheeks as she looked from the locket to Clarice and back again. "For all this time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "all this time, I had a family, a grandmother, and I never knew." Clarice rose from her chair, moving slowly toward Anna. She knelt before the young woman, taking her hands gently. "Anna, I know I have no right to ask this of you, but can you forgive me? Can you give me a chance to make things right, to be the grandmother I should have been all along?" Anna looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Clarice. The pain and longing in the older woman's eyes mirrored her own. I don't know," Anna said honestly. "This is all so much to take in. I need time to process it all." Clarice nodded, understanding but unable to hide the hope in her eyes. "Of course, dear. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As if on cue, the phone in Clarice's study rang, startling them both. Clarice squeezed Anna's hands once before rising to answer it. "Hello, Richard." "Yes. What have you found?" She listened intently, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock. "So you're certain?" Yes, I understand. Thank you, Richard. Please keep digging. We need to know everything." She hung up the phone, turning back to Anna with a mix of emotions playing across her face. "That was my lawyer," she explained. "He's been looking into your background, trying to confirm our connection." Anna tensed, suddenly wary. "And what did he find?" Clarice took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to say. "He found records, Anna. Birth records. They confirmed that Emily had a daughter born about a year after she disappeared. The dates, the details, they all match up with you." Anna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "So it's true. Everything you've said, everything you've suspected, it's all true." Clarice nodded, her voice gentle but firm. "Yes, Anna. As far as we can tell, you are my granddaughter, Emily's daughter." The weight of the confirmation seemed to hit Anna all at once. She swayed on her feet, and Clarice quickly moved to steady her. I think I need some air," Anna said weakly. "Of course," Clarice agreed, leading Anna toward the French doors that opened onto the garden. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." As Anna stepped out into the cool evening air, Clarice watched her go, her heart aching with a mixture of joy at finding her long-lost granddaughter and sorrow for all the years they had missed. She knew this was just the beginning of a long and potentially difficult journey, but for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. Back in her study, Clarice picked up the photo of Emily once more. "Oh, my darling girl," she whispered. "What happened to you? And how can I make things right?" As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Clarice settled into wait. She knew the revelations of the day were just the tip of the iceberg. There were still so many questions to answer, so many wounds to heal. But for now, all she could do was wait and hope that Anna would find it in her heart to give her a chance. The night deepened and still Anna hadn't returned. Clarice found herself pacing the study, alternating between staring out the window into the darkened garden and obsessively reviewing the documents Richard had sent over. Each piece of information seemed to confirm what they already knew, but it also raised new questions. Why had Emily gone to such lengths to hide Anna's existence? What had she been afraid of? And most pressingly, where was Emily now? As the clock struck midnight, Clarice heard the soft creak of the garden door. Anna slipped back into the study, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed from crying, but there was a determination in her stance that hadn't been there before. "Miss Clarice," Anna began, her voice hoarse but steady, "I've been thinking about everything you've told me, everything I've learned, and I have questions, so many questions." Clarice nodded, gesturing for Anna to sit. "Of course you do, dear, and I promise I'll answer them as best I can. What would you like to know?" Anna took a deep breath, seeming to gather her courage. "Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning. I need to understand who my mother really was, why she left, and why she never told me about any of this." Clarice settled into her chair, preparing herself for a long night of difficult conversations. As she began to speak, recounting the story of Emily's childhood, her rebellious teenage years, and the events leading up to her disappearance, she couldn't help but feel a mix of grief and hope. This was a chance to set things right, to understand the past, and perhaps, just perhaps, to build a future with a granddaughter she never knew she had. As the night wore on and the stories unfolded, both Clarice and Anna found themselves on a journey of discovery, piecing together the fragments of a family torn apart by misunderstanding and fear, but with the potential to be whole once more. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows of the study, Clarice and Anna sat in silence, both emotionally drained from the night's revelations. The air between them was thick with unspoken thoughts and lingering questions. Clarice watched her newly discovered granddaughter, marveling at the strength and resilience she saw in the young woman's eyes. Anna broke the silence first, her voice soft but steady. "Miss Clarice, I need to tell you something about my past, about the things I've done to survive." Clarice leaned forward, her heart racing. "Whatever it is, Anna, you can tell me. I'm here to listen, not to judge." Anna took a deep breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "After my mother, after she was gone, I was alone. I had no money, no skills, no one to turn to. I did things I'm not proud of. I stole. I lied. Her voice broke. "I even worked for some dangerous people for a while, just to survive." Clarice felt a pang of guilt, so strong it nearly took her breath away. If only she had known, if only she had found Anna sooner. "Oh, Anna," she whispered, reaching out to take the young woman's hand. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that alone." Anna's eyes met Clarice's, filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad. I'm telling you because if we're going to have any kind of relationship, you need to know who I really am. All of me, not just the parts that are easy to accept." Clarice nodded, her grip on Anna's hand tightening. "Thank you for trusting me with this, Anna. Your honesty means more to me than you can know. And please understand that nothing you've done changes how I feel about you. If anything, it makes me admire your strength even more." A small smile tugged at the corners of Anna's mouth, the first genuine one Clarice had seen since their conversation began. "You really mean that, don't you?" "With all my heart," Clarice affirmed. "We've both made mistakes, Anna. We've both done things we regret. But what matters now is how we move forward, together, if you'll allow it." Anna nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing slightly. I think I'd like that. But Miss Clarice, there's something else, something I haven't told you about my mother's disappearance." Clarice felt her heart skip a beat. "What is it, Anna?" The night she was taken," Anna began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw something. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard voices, angry voices. I peeked out of my room and saw a man arguing with my mother. He was tall, well-dressed. He kept saying something about paying debts and time running out. My mother looked terrified. Clarice's mind raced, trying to process this new information. Did you see his face? Would you recognize him if you saw him again?" Anna shook her head. It was dark, and I was so scared. I just remember his voice and a scar on his right hand. It was shaped like a crescent moon. The description sent a chill down Clarice's spine. It was oddly specific, and something about it nagged at the back of her mind. Anna, this is very important. We need to tell Richard about this. It might be the key to finding out what really happened to Emily. As if on cue, the phone rang, startling them both. Clarice answered it, her voice tense. Richard, yes, we're both here. What have you found? She listened intently, her expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. Are you sure? Yes, I understand. We'll be careful. Thank you, Richard. Hanging up the phone, Clarice turned to Anna, her face pale. That was Richard. He's uncovered some disturbing information. It seems your mother's disappearance might be connected to a larger criminal organization, one that has ties to some very powerful people in the city. Anna's eyes widened in fear. What does that mean for us? Clarice took a deep breath, steeling herself. It means we need to be very careful, Anna. The people involved in this, they're dangerous. But it also means we're closer to the truth than ever before. We can't give up now. As the gravity of the situation settled over them, Clarice couldn't help but feel a mix of determination and fear. They were on the brink of uncovering a truth that had been buried for years, a truth that could potentially put them both in danger. Anna, Clarice said, her voice soft but firm, I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter what we uncover, I'm here for you. We're in this together now. Anna nodded, a look of resolve settling on her face. Together, she agreed. As they sat there, the morning sun now fully illuminating the study, Clarice felt a strange sense of peace amidst the turmoil. They had a long road ahead, filled with challenges and potential dangers, but they would face it as a family. The sound of birds chirping outside drew their attention to the window. The garden, bathed in the soft morning light, seemed to promise a new beginning. Clarice stood, gently pulling Anna to her feet. Come, she said. Let's get some breakfast. We have a lot of work to do. As they left the study arm in arm, Clarice couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would finally uncover the truth about Emily's disappearance and bring her home. Little did they know, their journey was about to take an unexpected turn. One that would test their newfound bond and reveal secrets that had been buried for far too long. But that, dear readers, is a story for another time. As we leave Clarice and Anna to their breakfast, we can't help but wonder what twists and turns await them. Will they uncover the truth about Emily? What dangers lurk in the shadows of their past? And how will their relationship evolve as they face these challenges together? If you're as intrigued as we are by their story, make sure to stay tuned for the next installment. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications about upcoming chapters in this gripping tale of family, mystery, and redemption. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue bringing you captivating stories like this one. Until next time, dear readers, may your own family mysteries be as intriguing and your bonds as strong as those forming between Clarice and Anna. Remember, sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of kindness, like offering shelter to a stranger in the rain. Who knows what remarkable stories are waiting to unfold in your own life? As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, Clarice and Anna sat at the kitchen table, picking at their breakfast. The weight of their recent discoveries hung heavily in the air. Clarice couldn't help but notice how Anna's eyes kept darting toward the windows, as if expecting danger to burst in at any moment. Anna, Clarice began gently, I know this is all overwhelming, but I promise you we're safe here. Anna nodded, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. It's just, I've spent so long looking over my shoulder, Miss Clarice. It's hard to believe it might finally be over. Before Clarice could respond, the shrill ring of the telephone pierced the air. Both women jumped, exchanging a nervous glance before Clarice rose to answer it. Hello? Yes, Richard. What is it? Clarice's face paled as she listened, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the receiver. Are you certain? Yes, yes, I understand. We'll be ready. She hung up the phone and turned to Anna, her expression grave. That was Richard. He's uncovered something big, Anna. Something that could blow this whole case wide open. Anna leaned forward, her breakfast forgotten. What is it? Did he find out what happened to my mother? Clarice shook her head. Not exactly, but he's found a connection, a name that keeps coming up in his investigation. Gerald Thompson. The name hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Who is Gerald Thompson? Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Clarice sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. Gerald. He was an old friend of the family, someone I trusted implicitly. He was there the night Emily disappeared. He helped with the search, comforted me when hope seemed lost. I never suspected. Her voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Anna reached across the table, taking Clarice's hand in hers. Suspected what, Miss Clarice? Clarice met Anna's gaze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Richard believes Gerald might be involved in Emily's disappearance. He's found financial records, Anna, large sums of money changing hands, offshore accounts. And it all traces back to Gerald. Anna's grip on Clarice's hand tightened. But why? Why would he do this? Clarice shook her head, her voice bitter. I don't know. Money, power, or maybe it was something more personal. Gerald always had a soft spot for Emily. I thought it was fatherly affection, but now... She couldn't finish the thought, the implications too horrifying to voice. Anna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. We need to find him. We need to make him tell us what happened to my mother. Clarice rose as well, placing a calming hand on Anna's shoulder. We will, dear, but we need to be careful. Gerald is powerful, connected. If he realizes we're onto him, he could disappear, or worse. As if on cue, the sound of tires on gravel echoed from outside. Both women froze, their eyes locked on the kitchen window. A black car had pulled up in front of the mansion, its tinted windows obscuring any view of the occupants. Miss Clarice, Anna whispered, her voice trembling. Are we expecting anyone? Clarice shook her head slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. No, we're not. They watched in tense silence as the car door opened. A tall figure emerged, his face hidden by the brim of a hat. But as he turned toward the house, a ray of sunlight caught his hand, illuminating a distinctive crescent-shaped scar. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It's him, she breathed. The man from that night. The one who took my mother. Clarice's mind raced. Could it be Gerald? After all these years, had he finally come to silence them? She grabbed Anna's hand, pulling her toward the back of the house. We need to get out of here, Clarice said urgently. There's a hidden passage in the study, Clarice whispered urgently. It leads to a garage on the other side of the property. We can take my car and get to Richard's office. As they hurried through the house, the sound of heavy footsteps on the front porch spurred them on. They had just reached the study when the loud crack of splintering wood echoed through the mansion. The front door had been forced open. Clarice's hand shook as she fumbled with the hidden latch on the bookcase. Finally, it swung open, revealing a dark passageway beyond. She ushered Anna inside, following close behind, and pulled the bookcase closed just as footsteps entered the study. They stood in the darkness, barely daring to breathe, as muffled voices filtered through from the other side of the wall. Search every room, a gruff voice commanded. They can't have gone far. Anna's grip on Clarice's hand was almost painful, but Clarice welcomed it. It anchored her, kept her from succumbing to the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Come on, she whispered, gently tugging Anna further into the passage. We need to keep moving. They made their way through the dark tunnel, guided only by Clarice's memory and the faint glow of emergency lights embedded in the floor. The air was thick with dust and the musty smell of disuse, but neither woman dared to cough or make a sound. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a small, well-hidden garage. Clarice's sleek black car sat waiting, a beacon of hope in their current nightmare. "Get in," Clarice instructed, fishing her keys from her pocket. "We need to get to Richard. He'll know what to do next." As they sped away from the property, taking a back road to avoid being seen, Clarice couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror. The mansion that had been her home for so many years now looked ominous, its windows dark and foreboding. "Miss Clarice," Anna's voice broke through her thoughts. "What's going to happen now?" Clarice reached over, squeezing Anna's hand reassuringly. "I don't know, dear, but whatever comes next, we'll face it together. I promise you that." As they drove toward the city, the sun climbing higher in the sky, Clarice felt a mix of fear and determination. They were on the run, pursued by shadows from the past, but they were also closer than ever to uncovering the truth about Emily's disappearance. Little did they know, the revelations waiting for them would shake the very foundations of everything they thought they knew. The journey ahead would test their newfound bond, force them to confront painful truths, and ultimately lead them to a confrontation that would change their lives forever. As the city skyline came into view, Clarice steeled herself for what was to come. Whatever dangers lay ahead, whatever secrets were yet to be uncovered, she knew one thing for certain. She would not rest until she had brought Emily home and ensured Anna's safety. The road ahead was uncertain, but with her granddaughter by her side, Clarice felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The car sped on, carrying them toward an uncertain future, but also toward the promise of answers and, perhaps, a chance at redemption. As they disappeared into the bustling city traffic, one could only wonder what twists and turns their story would take next, and how their quest for truth would ultimately unfold. The bustling city streets blurred past as Clarice navigated through the morning traffic, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Anna sat silently beside her, her gaze fixed on the side mirror, watching for any sign of pursuit. The tension in the car was palpable, both women acutely aware of the danger that seemed to be closing in from all sides. "We're almost there," Clarice said, breaking the silence as they turned onto a quieter street lined with imposing office buildings. "Richard's office is just ahead." As they pulled into the underground parking garage, Anna finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Clarice, I think I've seen him before." Clarice's heart skipped a beat as she parked the car and turned to face her granddaughter. "What do you mean, Anna? When?" Anna's eyes were distant, lost in a memory. "It was about a year ago. I was working at a diner in a small town upstate. He came in late one night, sat in my section. I remember thinking how out of place he looked in his expensive suit, but it was his eyes that really stuck with me, cold, calculating, like he was sizing everyone up." Clarice listened intently, her mind racing. "Did he say anything to you?" Anna nodded slowly. "He asked if I was new in town. Said I reminded him of someone he used to know. At the time, I thought he was just another creep trying to hit on me. But now I wonder if he knew who I was all along." The implications of Anna's words hung heavy in the air. If Gerald, or whoever this man was, had known about Anna's existence, had been tracking her movements, it meant their enemy was far more formidable than they had initially thought. "We need to tell Richard about this," Clarice said, her voice filled with renewed determination. Every detail could be important. As they made their way to the elevator, Clarice couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She ushered Anna inside quickly, pressing the button for Richard's floor with perhaps more force than necessary. The law offices of Hayes and Associates were quiet when they arrived, most of the staff not yet in for the day. Richard met them at the reception area, his usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, a testament to the long hours he'd been working on their case. "Clarice, Anna," he greeted them, his voice low and urgent. "Thank God you're both all right. When I couldn't reach you at the house, I feared the worst. We had an unexpected visitor. Clarice explained as Richard led them to his private office. Someone broke in, looking for us. We barely made it out. Richard's face darkened as he closed the office door behind them. It's as I feared then. They're making their move. Richard, Clarice asked, sinking into one of the plush leather chairs in front of his desk. What exactly have you uncovered? Who are they? The lawyer sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. It's bigger than we thought, Clarice. Much bigger. Gerald Thompson isn't just some rogue actor. He's part of a larger organization, one that's had its tendrils in the city's underbelly for decades. Anna leaned forward, her eyes wide. What kind of organization? The kind that deals in secrets and leverage, Richard replied grimly. They've been manipulating things from the shadows for years. Politics, business, law enforcement, nothing's been untouched. And your family, Clarice, seems to have been caught in their web somehow. Clarice felt a chill run down her spine. But why? What could they possibly want with us? Richard hesitated, his gaze flicking between Clarice and Anna. That's where things get complicated. I've found some documents. Financial records dating back to before Emily's disappearance. It seems your late husband, Jonathan, may have been involved with them. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Clarice processed Richard's words. Jonathan? No! That's impossible. He was a good man. He would never. I'm sorry, Clarice, Richard said softly, but the evidence is there. Large sums of money changing hands, coded messages, meetings with known associates of the organization. Jonathan was in deep, and from what I can piece together, he was trying to get out when he died, Clarice finished, her voice hollow. The car accident that had claimed Jonathan's life had always seemed so sudden, so senseless. Now, a terrible new possibility was taking shape in her mind. Anna, who had been listening intently, spoke up. But what does this have to do with my mother? With me, Richard turned his attention to the young woman. That's what I'm still trying to figure out. But I have a theory. I think Emily might have discovered what her father was involved in. Maybe she confronted him, or maybe she stumbled upon something she wasn't supposed to see. Either way, it put her in danger. So they took her, Clarice whispered, the pieces finally starting to fall into place. To keep her quiet, to protect their secrets. Richard nodded solemnly. It's possible. And if Anna is Emily's daughter, then I'm a loose end, Anna finished, her voice trembling slightly. A potential threat to their operation. The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Clarice reached out, taking Anna's hand in hers, offering what comfort she could. What do we do now? Clarice asked, looking to Richard for guidance. The lawyer's expression was grim, but determined. We keep digging. We've got enough now to start putting real pressure on some of these people, Richard said, his voice low and urgent. I have contacts in the FBI who've been building a case against this organization for years. With what we know now, we might finally be able to bring them down. Just then, a commotion outside the office caught their attention. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Richard moved swiftly to the door, peering out into the hallway. We need to move, he said urgently, turning back to Clarice and Anna. They're here. Clarice's heart began to race as she and Anna jumped to their feet. How did they find us so quickly? Richard was already moving, guiding them toward a hidden panel in the wall of his office. They must have eyes everywhere. We can't trust anyone right now. This passage leads to a secure garage in the building next door. I have a car waiting there. As they hurried through the narrow passageway, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them, Clarice couldn't help but marvel at how quickly their world had been turned upside down. Just days ago, she had been a lonely widow mourning a long-lost daughter. Now, she was on the run with a granddaughter she never knew she had, fleeing from a shadowy organization with tentacles reaching into every corner of their lives. They emerged into a dimly lit garage, Richard leading them to a nondescript sedan parked in a corner. Get in, he instructed, tossing the keys to Clarice. "Head north out of the city. I have a safe house upstate. I'll contact you when it's safe." As Clarice started the engine, Anna rolled down her window. "What about you?" she asked Richard, concern evident in her voice. The lawyer managed a small smile. "Don't worry about me. I'll keep them busy here. Throw them off your trail. Just promise me you'll both stay safe." With a final nod, Richard disappeared back into the passage, sealing it behind him. Clarice took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead, and pressed down on the accelerator. As they emerged onto the street, blending into the flow of morning traffic, Clarice glanced at Anna. The young woman's face was a mixture of fear and determination, a reflection of Clarice's own emotions. "We're going to get through this," Clarice said, as much to reassure herself as Anna. "We're going to find out what happened to your mother, and we're going to make these people pay for what they've done to our family." Anna nodded, her jaw set with resolve. "Together," she said softly, as they drove out of the city, leaving behind the only world they'd known. Clarice felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. They were heading into unknown territory, pursued by dangerous enemies, with only each other to rely on. But for the first time in years, she also felt truly alive, with a purpose that burned brighter than her fear. Little did they know, the journey ahead would test them in ways they could never have imagined. Secrets would be uncovered, loyalties would be tested, and the true strength of their newfound bond would be put to the ultimate test. But for now, as the city skyline receded in the rearview mirror, all that mattered was the road ahead and the promise of answers that lay at the end of it. The car sped north, carrying Clarice and Anna toward an uncertain future, but also toward the truth they both so desperately sought. And as the miles rolled by, one thing became clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by a bond of blood and shared determination to uncover the secrets that had shaped their lives for so long. The winding roads of upstate New York stretched out before them, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through dense forests and rolling hills. Clarice's hands were steady on the wheel, her eyes constantly darting to the rearview mirror, watching for any sign of pursuit. Beside her, Anna sat in tense silence, her gaze fixed on the passing landscape. As they drove further from the city, the adrenaline that had fueled their escape began to ebb, replaced by a heavy weariness. The weight of all they had learned in the past few days settled over them like a thick fog. "Miss Clarice," Anna finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think Richard is okay?" Clarice glanced at her granddaughter, noting the worry etched on her young face. "Richard is smart and resourceful," she replied, trying to infuse her voice with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "He's been in tough situations before. I'm sure he'll find a way to throw them off our trail." Anna nodded, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. "I can't help but feel responsible for all of this," she admitted. "If I hadn't shown up at your door—" "Don't!" Clarice cut her off gently but firmly. "None of this is your fault, Anna. If anything, your appearance has finally given me the chance to uncover the truth about what happened to Emily, to understand the web of lies and secrets that has surrounded our family for far too long." As they lapsed back into silence, Clarice's mind wandered to the revelations about her late husband, Jonathan. The idea that he had been involved with the very organization that had taken Emily was almost too painful to contemplate. Had she ever really known him at all? The hours passed, the scenery gradually changing from dense forest to more open farmland. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Clarice spotted a small roadside diner. "We should stop," she said, already signaling to turn off the main road. "Get something to eat, maybe rest for a bit. We can't keep driving indefinitely." Anna looked uncertain. "Is it safe?" Clarice managed a small smile. "As safe as anywhere, I suppose. We can't stay on the road forever, and we need to keep our strength up. Besides, we're far enough in the city now that we should be able to blend in." The diner was nearly empty when they entered. Just a few truckers at the counter and an elderly couple in a booth near the back. Clarice and Anna slid into a booth near the door, both instinctively positioning themselves to keep an eye on the entrance. A tired-looking waitress approached, notepad in hand. "What can I get you, ladies?" They ordered coffee and sandwiches, more out of necessity than appetite. As they waited for their food, Clarice noticed Anna's gaze fixed on something outside the window. "What is it?" she asked, tensing slightly. Anna shook her head, as if coming out of a daze. "Nothing, it's just, this place reminds me of where I used to work." She trailed off, her eyes distant. Clarice reached across the table, gently squeezing Anna's hand. "Tell me about it," she encouraged. "About your life before all this. I want to know everything about you, Anna." For a moment, Anna hesitated, but then the words began to flow. She told Clarice about the series of small towns she and her mother had lived in, never staying in one place for too long. About the odd jobs she'd taken to help make ends meet. The dreams she'd harbored of going to college someday, of having a normal life. As Anna spoke, Clarice felt her heart ache for all the opportunities her granddaughter had been denied. The stable home, the education, the carefree childhood that should have been hers by right. "I'm so sorry, Anna," Clarice said when the young woman finally fell silent. "You deserved so much better than that life on the run." Anna shrugged, a sad smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "It wasn't all bad. My mother, she always made sure I felt loved. Even when things were tough, she taught me to be strong, to be independent." Their food arrived, momentarily halting the conversation. As they ate, Clarice couldn't help but marvel at the resilience of the young woman sitting across from her. Despite everything she'd been through, Anna had an inner strength that shone through. As they were finishing their meal, the bell over the diner's door chimed. Clarice glanced up, her blood running cold at the sight of two men in dark suits entering. They didn't look like typical diner patrons, their eyes scanning the room with calculated precision. "Anna," Clarice whispered urgently, "the man on the left. I recognize him. He was at one of the diners I worked at, asking questions about me and my mother." Clarice's mind raced. They'd been found somehow. But how? Had Richard been compromised, or had they simply underestimated the reach of their pursuers? "We need to leave," Clarice said under her breath, already reaching for her purse. "Slowly, calmly, head for the restrooms at the back," Clarice whispered. "There should be a window we can use." They stood, trying to appear casual as they made their way toward the back of the diner. Clarice could feel the men's eyes on them, could sense the moment they were recognized. "Run," she hissed, all pretense of calm abandoned as they heard chairs scraping behind them. They burst through the restroom door, Anna immediately spotting the small window above the sink. Without hesitation, she boosted herself up, squeezing through the narrow opening. Clarice followed, her heart pounding, as she heard the restroom door slam open behind her. They emerged into the parking lot behind the diner, sprinting toward their car. The sound of shouting and pounding footsteps spurred them on. Clarice fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking as she tried to unlock the door. Just as she heard the click of the lock disengaging, a rough hand grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around. She found herself face to face with one of their pursuers, his cold eyes boring into hers. "Mrs. Morgan," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, "I'm afraid you'll need to come with us, both of you." But before Clarice could respond, a blur of motion caught her eye. Anna, wielding a heavy branch she must have snatched from the ground, swung with all her might. The branch connected with the man's head with a sickening crack, and he crumpled to the ground. "Get in!" Anna shouted, already diving for the passenger seat. Clarice didn't need to be told twice. She slammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life as she threw the car into reverse. Tires screeched as they peeled out of the parking lot, narrowly missing the second man as he emerged from around the corner of the diner. As they sped back onto the main road, Clarice's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She glanced at Anna, seeing her own mix of fear and adrenaline mirrored on her granddaughter's face. Are you okay? Clarice asked, her voice trembling slightly. Anna nodded, her eyes wide. I can't believe I did that, she said, sounding almost surprised at herself. Despite the gravity of their situation, Clarice felt a surge of pride. You were incredibly brave, she said. You saved us both. As they drove on into the gathering darkness, both women were lost in their own thoughts. Clarice couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Their pursuers had found them once. They would undoubtedly try again. We can't go to Richard's safe house, Clarice said after a long silence. If they found us at the diner, it's not safe. Anna turned to her, determination etched on her face. So what do we do now? Clarice took a deep breath, weighing their limited options. We need answers, she said finally. And I think I know where we might find them. It's time we stopped running and started fighting back. As the car sped through the night, carrying them toward an uncertain destination, Clarice felt a strange mix of fear and resolve. They were diving headfirst into danger, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was finally taking control of her own destiny. Little did they know, the path they were about to embark on would lead them to revelations beyond their wildest imaginations. Secrets long buried would come to light, testing the strength of their newfound bond and forcing them to confront truths that would shake the very foundations of everything they thought they knew. The road ahead was fraught with peril, but as Clarice glanced at Anna, seeing the determination in her granddaughter's eyes, she knew they would face whatever came next together. The truth about Emily, about the organization that had torn their family apart, was out there waiting to be uncovered, and they were finally ready to seek it out, no matter the cost. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon as Clarice guided the car down a winding, tree-lined driveway. Anna stirred from her restless sleep, blinking in confusion at the unfamiliar surroundings. Where are we? She asked, her voice still thick with sleep. Clarice's grip tightened on the steering wheel as a sprawling, Victorian-style mansion came into view. This, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, was your grandfather's private retreat. If there are answers to be found, they'll be here. As they pulled up to the grand entrance, Anna's eyes widened. I didn't know we had a place like this. Few people did, Clarice replied, a hint of bitterness in her tone. Jonathan kept many secrets, it seems. They approached the front door cautiously, Clarice fishing an old key from her purse. The lock turned with a rusty groan, and they stepped into a world frozen in time. Dust sheets covered the furniture, and the air was thick with the musty scent of disuse. We need to be careful, Clarice warned as they made their way through the foyer. I don't know if anyone else knows about this place, but we can't take any chances. Anna nodded, her eyes darting nervously around the room. What exactly are we looking for? Anything that might give us a clue about your grandfather's involvement with the organization, Clarice replied. Financial records, correspondence, anything that seems out of place. They split up, methodically searching room after room. Hours passed, yielding nothing but frustration and an increasing sense of unease. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Clarice found herself in what appeared to be Jonathan's study. Her fingers trailed over the dusty desk, memories flooding back of happier times, before secrets and lies had torn their family apart. A faint click beneath her hand startled her from her reverie. A hidden compartment in the desk had sprung open, revealing a stack of documents and a small leather-bound journal. Anna, Clarice called out, her heart racing. I think I've found something. Anna burst into the room, breathless with anticipation. Together, they pored over the documents, their eyes widening with each revelation. This can't be real, Anna whispered, her voice shaking. Grandfather he was trying to bring down the organization from the inside. Clarice nodded, her own hands trembling as she flipped through the journal. It seemed so. He got in too deep, realized the extent of their corruption, and decided to gather evidence against them. But then why? Anna's voice trailed off, the unspoken question hanging in the air between them. Why did they take your mother? Clarice finished, her voice heavy with realization. Because she found out. Look at this entry, just days before she disappeared. Anna leaned in, reading aloud from the journal. Emily discovered files. Confrontation inevitable. Must protect her at all costs. Oh, God, Anna whispered, her voice breaking. He knew. He knew they were coming for her. Clarice felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. And he couldn't stop it. Whatever evidence he had gathered, it wasn't enough to bring them down before they got to Emily. A sudden noise from downstairs made them both freeze. The unmistakable sound of the front door opening echoed through the empty house. We're not alone, Anna whispered, fear evident in her eyes. Clarice quickly gathered the documents and journal, stuffing them into a bag. We need to get out of here. There's a back staircase that leads to the gardens. If we can make it there, we might have a chance. They crept out of the study, their hearts pounding in their ears. The sound of footsteps on the main staircase spurred them on, and they raced down the narrow servant stairs, praying each step wouldn't creak and give them away. They burst out into the overgrown gardens, the bright sunlight momentarily blinding them. Clarice grabbed Anna's hand, pulling her toward a dense copse of trees at the edge of the property. Stop right there, a voice bellowed behind them. They ran faster, branches whipping at their faces as they plunged into the undergrowth. The sound of pursuit was close behind, but the thick foliage provided some cover. Suddenly, Anna's foot caught on a root, sending her sprawling to the ground with a cry of pain. Clarice skidded to a halt, her heart in her throat, as she saw her granddaughter clutching her ankle. I can't run. Anna gasped, tears of pain and frustration in her eyes. The sound of their pursuers was getting closer. Clarice made a split-second decision, thrusting her bag into Anna's hands. Take these, she said urgently. Find somewhere to hide. I'll lead them away. No, Anna protested, reaching for her grandmother. I won't leave you. Clarice cupped Anna's face in her hands, her eyes fierce with determination. You have to. These documents are the key to everything. You need to get them to Richard, to the authorities. Anna clutched the bag of documents to her chest, her heart pounding as she stared at her mother, alive, real, and standing before her after all these years. The flames from the burning mansion cast flickering shadows across Emily's face, illuminating the pain and determination in her eyes. Mom, Anna whispered again, her voice trembling. I thought you were gone. We all thought you were gone. Emily's grip on Anna's shoulders tightened, her expression a mix of relief and urgency. I'm so sorry, Anna. I never wanted to leave you, but I had no choice. If they thought I was dead, they wouldn't come after you. I've been working in the shadows, trying to bring them down. But now it's time to finish this. Anna's mind raced, torn between the overwhelming joy of seeing her mother alive and the crushing weight of everything she'd just learned. Grandma, Clarice, she's been searching for you all these years. She's been trying to find out what happened to you. And now, I don't even know if she's okay. Emily's face softened, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to her. But right now, we need to get out of here. It's not safe. As if to emphasize her point, another loud crack echoed through the night as part of the mansion's roof collapsed, sending a shower of sparks into the sky. The sirens were growing louder, but Anna knew they couldn't wait for help to arrive. Come on, Emily said, taking Anna's hand. We need to move. There's a car hidden in the woods. We'll use it to get to Richard's office. He's the only one we can trust right now. Anna hesitated, glancing back at the burning mansion. But what about the documents? What about the truth? If the house burns down, all the evidence. Emily shook her head, her voice firm. The truth isn't in that house, Anna. It's in here. She tapped the bag Anna was clutching. And it's in us. We're the only ones who can expose them now. but we have to survive to do it." With a final glance at the flames, Anna nodded, allowing her mother to lead her into the darkness of the woods. They moved quickly, Emily guiding them with the confidence of someone who knew the terrain well. Anna's ankle throbbed with every step, but she pushed through the pain, driven by the need to see this through. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small clearing where an old, nondescript sedan was hidden beneath a tarp. Emily pulled it off, revealing the car, and quickly unlocked the doors. "Get in," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We don't have much time." Anna slid into the passenger seat, clutching the bag of documents tightly. Emily started the engine, and they sped away from the burning mansion, the glow of the flames fading in the rear-view mirror. As they drove, Anna couldn't stop staring at her mother. It was surreal, seeing her alive after years of believing she was gone. "Mom," she said softly, "what happened? Why did you disappear? Why didn't you tell us you were alive?" Emily's hands tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles white. "It's complicated, Anna. Your grandfather. He got involved with something much bigger than any of us realized. When I found out what he was doing, I knew I had to stop it. But the organization, they're powerful, Anna. They have eyes and ears everywhere. If they thought I was still alive, they would have come after you, after Clarice. I couldn't risk that." Anna's heart ached at the thought of all the years they'd lost, all the pain her grandmother had endured. "But we could have helped you. We could have fought them together." Emily glanced at her daughter, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and regret. "I wanted to protect you, Anna. I thought if I disappeared, if I made them believe I was gone, they'd leave you alone. But I never stopped fighting. I've been working with a small group of people who want to bring the organization down. And now, with these documents," she gestured to the bag in Anna's lap, "we finally have the proof we need." Anna looked down at the bag, her mind racing. What about Grandma? What if they hurt her? Emily's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes on the road. "Clarice is strong, Anna. Stronger than anyone I know. If anyone can survive this, it's her. But we can't think about that now. We have to focus on what's ahead. We have to get these documents to Richard. He's the only one who can help us expose the truth." The car sped through the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness as they made their way toward the city. Anna's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, relief, fear, anger, and hope, all battling for dominance. She had her mother back, but the cost had been unimaginable. As they approached the city limits, Emily reached over and squeezed Anna's hand. "We're going to make this right, Anna. For your grandfather, for Clarice, for everyone they've hurt. We're going to bring them down." Anna nodded, her resolve hardening. Together, the car merged onto the highway, carrying them toward an uncertain future. The truth about Emily, about the organization that had torn their family apart, was finally within reach. But the road ahead was fraught with danger, and the cost of that truth was proving to be higher than anyone could have imagined. As the city lights came into view, Anna felt a strange sense of determination. They had lost so much, but they still had each other. And with the documents in their possession, they had the power to expose the darkness that had haunted their family for so long. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But for the first time in years, Anna felt like they had a chance to uncover the truth, to bring justice for her grandfather, and to finally put an end to the shadows that had consumed their lives. The car sped on, carrying them toward a confrontation that would change everything. And as the miles rolled by, one thing became clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. "Wait," Anna said, clutching the bag of documents. "We can't leave. These papers, Grandpa's journal, they're the key to exposing everything." Emily's eyes widened as she saw the documents. "You found Jonathan's evidence. Anna, this changes everything. But we can't let them fall into the wrong hands. The organization has people everywhere, even in law enforcement. Then what do we do?" Anna asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. Emily's face set in a determined expression. We take them to the one person we know we can trust, Richard Hayes. He's been my contact on the outside all these years, helping me gather information. The revelation that Richard had known Emily was alive all along was another shock, but Anna pushed it aside, focusing on the immediate problem. But how do we find him? Grandma and I were supposed to meet him at a safe house, but we were attacked before we could get there. Emily nodded grimly. I know where he'll go. There's a backup location we established years ago for emergencies. But we need to hurry. Once the fire is out, they'll be searching for any survivors. As they made their way through the woods toward Emily's hidden car, Anna's mind was whirling with questions. Mom, she said hesitantly, what happened that night? When you disappeared, Emily's steps faltered for a moment before she continued, her voice low. I had discovered the extent of your grandfather's involvement with the organization. I confronted him, threatened to go to the authorities. He tried to warn me of the danger, but I didn't listen. That night, they came for me. Your grandfather. He sacrificed himself, created a diversion that allowed me to escape. By the time I realized what he'd done, it was too late. I couldn't go back without putting you and Clarice in danger. Anna felt a fresh wave of grief for the grandfather she'd never known, the man who had given everything to protect his family. I've been gathering evidence, building a case strong enough to bring down the entire organization, Emily finished. It hasn't been easy, and there were so many times I wanted to come back, to hold you in my arms. But I knew that if I did, they'd kill us all. As they reached the car, hidden under a camouflage tarp, a new thought struck Anna. Wait, Grandma. She led them away from me. We have to find her. Emily's face paled. Clarice is here? Where? Anna quickly explained what had happened at the mansion, watching as her mother's expression shifted from shock to determination. We'll find her, Anna. I promise, Emily said as they got into the car. But first, we need to get these documents to Richard. It's what Clarice would want us to do. As they drove through the night, Anna felt as though she were in a dream. Her mother, alive and by her side, the truth about her family's past finally coming to light. But the joy of reunion was tempered by fear for Clarice and the weight of the task ahead. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. The organization was closing in, and the final confrontation would test the bonds of their newly reunited family in ways they could never have imagined. As dawn broke on a new day, Anna steeled herself for what was to come, knowing that the truth about her family's past and her own future hung in the balance. The car sped through the night, its headlights cutting through the darkness as Emily navigated the winding back roads. Anna sat in the passenger seat, her mind still reeling from the events of the past few hours. The bag containing Jonathan's documents sat clutched tightly in her lap, a tangible link to the grandfather she'd never known and the truth they were fighting to uncover. How much further? Anna asked, breaking the tense silence that had fallen between them. Emily glanced at her daughter, a mix of love and worry in her eyes. Not far now. Richard's backup location is an old hunting cabin deep in the woods. It's off the grid, virtually impossible to find unless you know exactly where to look. As they drove, Anna couldn't help but study her mother's face, noting the similarities and differences from the photos she treasured for so long. There were new lines around Emily's eyes, a hardness that spoke of years spent looking over her shoulder. But there was also a fierce determination that Anna recognized in herself. Mom, Anna began hesitantly, all these years, did you ever try to contact us? To let us know you were alive? Emily's hands tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. Oh, Anna, she sighed, her voice heavy with regret. There were so many times I wanted to, nights when I'd lie awake, imagining what it would be like to hold you in my arms again, to see you grow up. But every time I came close, something would happen to remind me of the danger. I couldn't risk your safety or Clarice's. Anna nodded, understanding but still feeling the ache of those lost years. And Grandma? Did she know anything about this? No, Emily said firmly. I couldn't put that burden on her. It was safer for everyone if she truly believed I was gone. Richard was my only contact, and even he didn't know everything. As they turned onto a narrow dirt road, barely more than a track through the trees, Emily's expression grew more serious. Anna, before we reach the cabin, there's something you need to know. The organization we're dealing with, it's not just some criminal enterprise. It reaches into the highest levels of government, law enforcement, even international corporations. What your grandfather uncovered, what I've been fighting against all these years, it's bigger than any of us imagined. Anna felt a chill run down her spine at her mother's words. How deep does it go? Deep enough that we can't trust anyone outside our immediate circle, Emily replied grimly. That's why it's been so hard to gather enough evidence to bring them down. They have people everywhere, ready to bury the truth at a moment's notice. The car came to a stop in a small clearing, the cabin barely visible in the pre-dawn light. As they got out, Anna winced at the pain in her ankle, a reminder of their narrow escape from the mansion. Emily was immediately at her side, supporting her. Are you okay? What happened? Anna quickly explained about twisting her ankle during their flight from Gerald and his men. Emily's face darkened at the mention of Gerald's name. Gerald Thompson, she spat, disgust evident in her voice. He was like an uncle to me growing up. To think he was involved in all of this, it makes me sick. As they approached the cabin, a figure emerged from the shadows, gun raised. Anna tensed, but Emily stepped forward, hands raised. It's us, Richard, she called out softly. We made it. The gun lowered, and Richard Hayes stepped into view, looking haggard and relieved. Thank God, he breathed, ushering them inside. When I couldn't reach Clarice, I feared the worst. Once inside the sparse but comfortable cabin, Richard turned to Anna, his eyes filled with concern. Anna, where's your grandmother? What happened? Anna swallowed hard, fighting back tears as she recounted their escape from the mansion and Clarice's sacrifice to lead their pursuers away. As she spoke, she saw the color drain from both Richard and Emily's faces. We have to find her, Emily said, her voice shaking. She's out there alone, thinking I'm dead, facing God knows what. Richard held up a hand, his expression grim. We will, Emily, but first we need to deal with what's in that bag. And if what you've told me is true, those documents could be the key to bringing down the entire organization. Anna handed over the bag, watching anxiously as Richard and Emily pored over its contents. The sun was rising, casting long shadows through the cabin windows by the time they finished. Richard looked up, his eyes blazing with a mixture of triumph and fear. This is it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything we need to expose them. Financial records, communication logs, even details of their operations. Jonathan, he must have been planning this for years. Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. He was trying to protect us in his own way. Oh, Dad! The moment of reflection was shattered by the sound of approaching vehicles. Richard rushed to the window, his face paling. They've found us, he said, his voice tight with tension. How the hell did they track us here? Emily was already moving, gathering up the documents. It doesn't matter. We need to get out of here now. Is there another way out? Emily? Clarice whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Is it really you? Emily stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Mom. It's me. I'm here. For a moment, Clarice simply stared, as if afraid the vision before her would disappear. Then, with a sob, she rushed forward, pulling Emily into a fierce embrace. Anna watched, her own tears falling as the two women clung to each other, years of pain and separation melting away in that single moment. I thought I'd lost you, Clarice choked out, her hands gripping Emily's shoulders as if to confirm she was real. All these years, I thought you were gone. I'm so sorry, Mom, Emily said, her voice breaking. I wanted to come back to tell you the truth, but I couldn't risk it. I had to protect Anna. I had to finish what Dad started. Clarice's eyes flicked to Anna, who stood a few steps behind, clutching the bag of documents. Anna, she said, her voice filled with relief and love. You're safe. Thank God. Anna stepped forward, joining the embrace. We did it, Grandma. We exposed them. The truth is out there now. Clarice pulled back slightly, her eyes searching Emily's face. What do you mean? What happened? Emily took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. We found Dad's evidence. Everything he'd gathered about the organization. Anna came up with the idea to upload it all online, to make it public so they couldn't cover it up. Richard helped us. It's done, Mom. The world knows the truth now. Clarice's hands trembled as she reached up to touch Emily's face. Jonathan, he was trying to protect us all along, wasn't he? Emily nodded, tears spilling over. Yes, he was trying to bring them down, but he got in too deep. When I found out, I knew I had to finish what he started, but I couldn't risk coming back. Not until it was safe. Clarice's gaze shifted to Anna, her expression softening. And you've been so brave, Anna. I'm so proud of you. Anna felt a lump form in her throat. We couldn't have done it without you, Grandma. You've been my rock through all of this. The sound of distant sirens broke the moment, reminding them that they weren't out of danger yet. Richard stepped forward, his voice urgent. We need to move. The authorities will be swarming the area soon, and we don't know who we can trust. We need to get somewhere safe. Emily nodded, her protective instincts kicking in. He's right. We can't stay here. But where do we go? Clarice straightened, her eyes filled with determination. I know a place. It's not far from here, a cabin in the woods. It's off the grid, completely hidden. We can regroup there, figure out our next steps. Emily hesitated, glancing at Richard. Is it safe? Clarice nodded. It's been in the family for generations. No one knows about it except us. It's the perfect place to lay low until we can sort this out. Richard looked between them, his expression serious. Then let's go. We don't have much time. They moved quickly, staying low, and using the trees for cover as they made their way through the forest. Clarice led the way, her steps sure despite her exhaustion. Anna stayed close to her grandmother, her heart swelling with relief that they were all together again. As they walked, Anna couldn't help but marvel at the strength of the women beside her, her mother, who had sacrificed everything to protect her family, and her grandmother, who had never given up hope. Together, they had faced unimaginable danger and come out the other side. When they finally reached the cabin, hidden deep in the woods and surrounded by towering trees, Anna felt a sense of peace wash over her. It was a simple structure, weathered by time but sturdy and secure. Inside, they gathered around a small table, the weight of everything they'd been through settling over them. Clarice reached out, taking both Emily's and Anna's hands in hers. We've been through so much, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. But we're together now, and that's what matters. Emily nodded, squeezing Clarice's hand. We'll get through this, Mom. Together. Anna looked between her mother and grandmother, feeling a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing. We're stronger together, she said softly, and no matter what happens, we'll face it as a family. As the sun set outside the cabin, casting a warm glow through the windows, the three women sat together, finally reunited after years of separation and pain. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But for the first time in a long time, they faced it with hope. The truth had been exposed, the shadows of the past brought into the light. And now, as a family, they could begin to heal and rebuild what had been lost. The journey wasn't over, but they were ready to face whatever came next together. Emily, Clarice's voice was barely a whisper, her hand reaching out as if to touch a ghost. "Is it really you?" Emily fell to her knees beside her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Mom!" she choked out. "It's me. I'm here. I'm so sorry for everything." As mother and daughter embraced for the first time in over 2 decades, Anna felt her own eyes fill with tears. The sight of her grandmother and mother reunited was overwhelming, a moment she had dreamed of but never truly believed would happen. Clarice looked up, her tear-stained face breaking into a smile as she saw Anna. "You're safe," she breathed, reaching out to pull her granddaughter into the embrace. "Both of you, you're safe." For a long moment, the 3 generations of Morgan women held each other, years of pain and separation melting away in the warmth of their reunion. Richard stood back, allowing them this private moment, but keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. Finally, Clarice pulled back, her eyes moving between Emily and Anna. "But how? Emily, I thought you were." Emily took a deep breath, prepared to explain everything. But Richard's urgent voice cut through the moment. "I hate to interrupt," he said, his tone tense. "But we're not out of danger yet. We need to move. Now." In the distance, they could hear the sound of vehicles approaching. The bubble of their reunion burst, reality crashing back in with brutal force. Clarice struggled to her feet, determination replacing the shock on her face. "He's right. There's an old groundskeeper's cottage not far from here. It's secluded, and I doubt anyone remembers it exists. We can regroup there, figure out our next move." As they hurried through the overgrown gardens, following Clarice's lead, Anna felt a strange mix of emotions. Joy at having her family reunited, fear of the danger still pursuing them, and a steely resolve to see this through to the end. The cottage, when they reached it, was little more than a glorified shack, hidden behind years of untended foliage. But it offered shelter and, more importantly, a chance to catch their breath and plan their next move. Once inside, Richard immediately set to work, using a battered old radio he found to try and pick up news broadcasts. The others collapsed onto the dusty furniture, the adrenaline of their reunion giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. "The documents," Clarice said suddenly, looking around with worry. "Did you manage to save them?" Emily nodded. Patting the bag she kept clutched to her side throughout their journey. "We did more than save them, Mom. We released them. Everything. It's all out in the open now." Clarice's eyes widened as Emily and Anna took turns explaining what had transpired. The uploading of the documents and Gerald's arrest. "So it's over?" Clarice asked, hope and disbelief warring in her voice. "After all these years, it's finally over?" Richard looked up from the radio, his expression grave. "Not quite. The news is buzzing with the revelations, but there's also a manhunt underway. For us. We're being painted as terrorists, accused of spreading false information to destabilize the government." The weight of their situation settled over the group. They had struck a massive blow against the organization, but the fight was far from over. They were now fugitives, with powerful enemies still at large and determined to silence them. "What do we do now?" Anna asked, looking between the adults who had shaped her life in such profound ways. Emily stood, her face set with determination. "We finished this, once and for all. We have the truth on our side now, and we're together. That's more than we've had in years." Clarice nodded, reaching out to take her daughter's hand. "Together," she agreed, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. As they began to formulate a plan, Anna felt a surge of pride and determination. Her family, fractured for so long by secrets and lies, was united at last. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they would face them as one. The old cottage, hidden away in the overgrown gardens of their past, became a war room of sorts. As they plotted their next moves, reaching out to trusted contacts and piecing together the extent of the fallout from their revelations, Anna realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their story. The truth was out, but the real battle, for justice, for redemption, for a future free from the shadows of the past, was only just beginning. And this time, they would fight it together, 3 generations of Morgan women united by blood, by love, and by an unshakable determination to see justice done. The old groundskeeper's cottage buzzed with tension as Clarice, Emily, Anna, and Richard huddled around a battered radio, listening intently to the latest news broadcast. The world outside was in chaos, reeling from the revelations they had unleashed. Unprecedented allegations of corruption at the highest levels of government and law enforcement. A reporter's voice crackled through the static. Documents released anonymously to multiple news outlets paint a picture of a vast conspiracy reaching into every corner of. Richard switched to another station, his face grim. Manhunt continues for the individuals believed to be responsible for this massive data leak. Authorities are urging citizens to be on the lookout for Clarice Morgan, her recently discovered granddaughter Anna, and Emily Morgan, long thought deceased but now. He turned off the radio, the silence in the cottage deafening. Well, Emily said, breaking the tension, at least they got one thing right. I'm not dead. Despite the gravity of their situation, Anna couldn't help but chuckle. It was a small moment of levity in the storm they found themselves in. Clarice stood, pacing the small confines of the cottage. We need a plan. We can't stay here forever, and we can't keep running. There has to be a way to clear our names, to make people understand that we're not the villains in this story. Richard nodded, his legal mind already working on possibilities. The key is finding someone we can trust, someone with enough authority and integrity to listen to our side of the story without immediately turning us in. But who? Anna asked, the weight of their fugitive status settling heavily on her shoulders. The organization's reach is so vast. How can we be sure anyone is truly free from their influence? Emily, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up. I might know someone, an old friend from my college days. She's a federal judge now, with a reputation for being incorruptible. If anyone would be willing to hear us out, it's her. Clarice turned to her daughter, hope and weariness warring in her eyes. Can we trust her, Emily? After everything that's happened, Emily met her mother's gaze, years of pain and misunderstanding passing between them. We have to trust someone, Mom. And Judge Sandra Hawkins. She was always driven by a sense of justice. If we can get to her, show her what we know, I believe she'll help us. The group fell silent, considering their options. It was a risk, but one they might have to take. All right, Richard said finally, but getting to a federal judge while we're the most wanted people in the country isn't going to be easy. We need a plan. As they began to brainstorm, Anna found her mind wandering. She thought of the life she had led before all this began, the simple existence working in diners and dreaming of a better future. Now, here she was, caught up in a conspiracy that threatened to shake the foundations of society itself. I have an idea, Anna said suddenly, causing the others to turn to her in surprise. But it's dangerous, and you're not going to like it. She outlined her plan, a plan that would put her directly in the spotlight, using the media frenzy surrounding their case to their advantage. It was risky, borderline reckless, but it just might work. Emily shook her head vehemently. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. I won't lose you again. Not when I've just found you. But Clarice was looking at her granddaughter with a mixture of pride and understanding. It could work, she said softly. And Anna's right, it might be our best shot. As the debate raged on, tensions rising and falling, Anna found herself studying the faces of her family. Her grandmother, worn by years of grief, but still fiercely determined. Her mother, a stranger and yet so familiar, fighting to protect the daughter she had been forced to abandon. And Richard, loyal to the end, risking everything for the truth. Finally, a consensus was reached. They would move forward with Anna's plan, but with modifications to ensure her safety as much as possible. As she spoke, her voice steady despite the chaos around her, she felt a strange sense of calm. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. The truth was finally out there, and there was no turning back. "Everything I've told you is true," Anna said, her voice carrying over the noise of the crowd. "The corruption, the lies, the people who've been pulling the strings for decades. It's all real, and we have the proof." The reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing as they tried to capture every word. Anna held up a hand, silencing them for a moment. "I'm turning myself in because I believe in justice. But I'm also here to make sure that the truth doesn't get buried. This isn't just about my family. It's about everyone who's been hurt by this system. It's about making things right." As she finished speaking, the sound of sirens grew louder. Police cars screeched to a halt in front of the courthouse, officers pouring out and pushing through the crowd. Anna raised her hands, showing she wasn't a threat. "I'm here to cooperate," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I want my lawyer present, and I want the evidence we've gathered to be seen by the public. This isn't just about me. It's about the truth." The officers hesitated for a moment, glancing at each other. The crowd of reporters was growing restless, their cameras capturing every moment. Finally, one of the officers stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. "Anna Morgan, you're under arrest," he said, his voice loud enough for the cameras to pick up. As the cuffs clicked into place, Anna felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. The truth was out there, and there was no turning back. Across town, Clarice, Emily, Richard, and Judge Hawkins watched the scene unfold on a small TV in a secure room at the courthouse. Emily's hands were clenched into fists, her heart breaking as she saw her daughter being led away. "She's so brave," Emily whispered, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe she's doing this." "She's your daughter," Clarice said, her voice filled with pride. "And she's stronger than any of us realize." Judge Hawkins stood, her expression resolute. "We need to act quickly. If we're going to make sure this evidence gets the attention it deserves, we can't waste any time. I'll convene a special hearing. We'll present everything, the documents, the testimony, all of it. But we need to move fast before they can shut us down." Richard nodded, already pulling out his phone. "I'll start making calls. We need to get as many eyes on this as possible. The media, other judges, anyone who can help us keep this from being buried." Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Let's finish this. For Anna, for Jonathan, for everyone who's been hurt by this." As they left the room, Clarice felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear for Anna, pride in her family, and a fierce determination to see this through to the end. They had come so far, fought so hard, and now it was all coming down to this. The next few hours were a blur. Judge Hawkins worked tirelessly to arrange the hearing, using her influence to ensure it would be as public as possible. Richard coordinated with trusted allies in the legal world, making sure the evidence would be presented in a way that couldn't be ignored. And Emily and Clarice stood together, united in their determination to see justice done. When the hearing finally began, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, and curious onlookers filled every seat, their eyes fixed on the front of the room. Anna was brought in, her hands cuffed but her head held high. She met her mother's and grandmother's eyes, a silent message passing between them. This was it. As the hearing began, Judge Hawkins took control, her voice firm and commanding. "What we are about to discuss today is a matter of national importance. The evidence presented here today will expose a conspiracy that has plagued our country for decades. It is my duty and the duty of everyone in this room to ensure that the truth is heard." One by one, the documents were presented, the story of corruption and betrayal laid bare for all to see. Anna testified, her voice steady as she recounted everything she had learned, everything her family had been through. And when it was over, the room was silent. The weight of what had been revealed hung heavy in the air. Judge Hawkins stood, her expression grave. This hearing is adjourned. But let me be clear. The truth has been spoken here today, and it cannot be ignored. As the crowd began to disperse, Anna was led away, but this time there was a sense of hope in the air. The truth was out, and the fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, the Morgan family felt like they had a chance. Together, they had faced the darkness and brought it into the light. And now, they would face whatever came next together. The Morgan family had changed the course of history, and their story was far from over. As they stepped out of the courthouse, the world seemed to hold its breath. The revelations had sent shockwaves through the nation, and the streets outside were filled with a mix of protesters, supporters, and curious onlookers. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the air buzzed with tension and anticipation. Clarice, Emily, and Anna walked side by side, flanked by federal marshals. For the first time in years, they weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were standing tall, united, and ready to face whatever came next. Judge Hawkins had ensured their safety, at least for now. The warrants she had issued were already being executed, and high-ranking officials were being arrested across the country. The organization that had haunted their family for decades was beginning to crumble, but the fight was far from over. As they were escorted to a secure vehicle, Anna glanced back at the courthouse. It felt surreal, standing there in the midst of chaos, knowing that they had been the ones to set it all in motion. "Do you think it's enough?" Anna asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the crowd. Emily squeezed her daughter's hand. "It's a start. The truth is out there now, and people are demanding answers. We've done our part. Now it's up to the system to do the rest." Clarice nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd. "The fight isn't over, but we've given them something to fight for. Justice, accountability, and the truth." The federal marshals ushered them into the waiting vehicle, shielding them from the chaos outside. As the doors closed and the car pulled away, Anna leaned back in her seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "What happens now?" she asked, looking between her mother and grandmother. Emily exchanged a glance with Clarice before answering. "Now we wait. The investigation will take time, and there will be trials, hearings, and a lot of questions. But we'll face it together." Clarice reached over, taking Anna's hand. "And we'll rebuild, not just our family, but our lives. We've been living in the shadows for too long. It's time to step into the light." Anna smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. She had a family, a purpose, and a future. The car drove through the city, the streets alive with the energy of a nation waking up to the truth. People were gathering in public squares, holding signs and demanding change. The Morgan family's story had ignited a spark, and it was spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. As they arrived at a secure location, a safe house provided by Judge Hawkins, Anna felt a sense of hope she hadn't known was possible. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but they had each other, and that was enough. Inside the house, they gathered around a small table, the weight of everything they had been through settling over them. Clarice reached out, taking both Emily's and Anna's hands in hers. "We've been through so much," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "But we're together now, and that's what matters." Emily nodded, squeezing Clarice's hand. "We'll get through this, Mom. Together." Anna looked between her mother and grandmother, feeling a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing. "We're stronger together," she said softly. "And no matter what happens, we'll face it as a family." As the sun set outside the safe house, casting a warm glow through the windows, the three women sat together, finally reunited after years of separation and pain. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But for the first time in a long time, they faced it with hope. The truth had been exposed, the shadows of the past brought into the light. And now, as a family, They could begin to heal and rebuild what had been lost. The journey wasn't over, but they were ready to face whatever came next together. The Morgan family had changed the course of history, and their story was far from over. The weight of everything they had been through, the danger, the loss, the relentless pursuit of the truth, felt like a lifetime ago. Yet here they were, standing on the threshold of a new chapter, a chapter they could finally write on their own terms. When Richard finished speaking, the room fell into a comfortable silence. Emily broke it first, her voice soft but filled with determination. "We've been through so much, but now we get to live, really live, not just survive." Clarice reached out, taking her daughter's hand. "And we'll do it together. No more secrets. No more running." Anna smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged, not just to a family, but to a future full of possibilities. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the room, they began unpacking boxes, turning the house into a home. Laughter filled the air as they reminisced about the past and dreamed about the future. Later that evening, as they sat around the dining table sharing a meal, Anna looked around at the faces of her family. Her grandmother, strong and resilient. Her mother, brave and determined. And Richard, who had become more than just a lawyer. He was family too. "We've come so far," Anna said, her voice steady. "But this feels like the beginning of something even better." Clarice raised her glass, her eyes shining with pride. "To new beginnings," she said. "To family," Emily added. "To the truth," Richard chimed in. Anna clinked her glass against theirs, a smile spreading across her face. "To us." As they sat together, the weight of the past finally lifting, Anna felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. The road ahead would have its challenges, but they would face them together, stronger, united, and ready for whatever came next. The Morgan family had changed the course of history, and now they were ready to embrace the future they had fought so hard to create. The end. The Morgan family's journey had been one of pain, resilience, and ultimately triumph. Their story was a testament to the power of truth, the strength of family, and the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be silenced. As they stood together on the patio of their new home, the weight of their past no longer felt like a burden, but a foundation upon which they could build a brighter future. Clarice, Emily, and Anna had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had emerged stronger, united, and ready to embrace whatever came next. Their love for one another had been their guiding light, their anchor in the storm, and now it was their greatest strength as they stepped into a new chapter of their lives. Anna's decision to pursue law school was more than just a personal ambition. It was a continuation of the fight her family had started. She wanted to ensure that no one else would have to endure what they had, that justice would prevail for those who had been wronged. Emily, too, found purpose in their shared victory. She began writing a memoir, not just to tell their story, but to inspire others to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. Her words became a beacon of hope for those who felt powerless, a reminder that even in the darkest times, change was possible. Clarice, ever the matriarch, turned her attention to creating a foundation dedicated to helping families torn apart by injustice. Her vision was to provide support, resources, and a voice for those who had been silenced. It was her way of honoring Jonathan's sacrifice and ensuring that his legacy lived on. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the Morgan family settled into their new life. The scars of their past remained, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they served as reminders of how far they had come and how much they had overcome. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Anna broke the silence. "Do you think Grandpa would be proud of us?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Clarice smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "Oh, Anna, he would be so proud, not just of what we've accomplished, but of who we've become. We've honored his memory in the best way possible, by fighting for the truth and standing together as a family. Emily nodded, her hand resting on Anna's shoulder. He always believed in doing what was right, no matter how hard it was. And now, we're carrying that forward. That's the best way to honor him. Anna felt a swell of emotion, her heart full. She had found her place in the world, not just as a Morgan, but as someone who could make a difference. As the night deepened, the three women sat in comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, and now they were ready to embrace the future with open hearts and unshakable resolve. Their story was far from over. It was just beginning, the end. If this tale of resilience and family bonds has touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. As Clarice would say, the truth must come out no matter the cost. So let your voice be heard. Did you enjoy following the Morgans' quest for justice? Comment below if you found their story inspiring. Eager to discover what new challenges await Clarice, Emily, and Anna? Leave a comment if you're ready for the next chapter in their lives. And remember Anna's determination to fight for justice, to help others who have been silenced or victimized. If you have thoughts on how their story could unfold, or if there's anything you'd like to discuss, we welcome your comments. Lastly, as Richard would advise, we need to keep fighting. We've come too far to back down now. Support our team's ongoing efforts to bring you compelling stories by subscribing to our channel. Your engagement fuels our passion to create content that resonates and inspires. Together, let's continue this journey of storytelling, just as the Morgan women face their future, united and strong.